Every day in the USA, people find themselves in court.
All right, we are addressing a couple of sentences. Right now, we're addressing the matter of People versus Amber Lynn Stevens. The file number is 242240. Ms. Stevens is set for sentencing this morning. And I told her at the time of the plea, we were going to do a drug test the day of the sentence. So she's doing that right now. So I'm here with Assistant Prosecutor Gary Gabriel and Tim George. And Autumn from our probation department is doing the drug test. So they should be with us in just a moment.
She's positive for methamphetamine, but she doesn't want to admit when the last time was she used.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, let's return to the matter of Amber Lynn Stevens. File number is 242240. Ms. Stevens was charged with domestic violence, previous conviction as a felony, third offense, and resisting and obstructing a police officer. The complaining witness in this case was her grandmother, Barbara Rischel, and the assault wasn't anything overwhelming. Police came and there was a bit of a struggle and she had to be taken down. And again, nothing overwhelming, but it was clearly resisting, obstructing. She entered a plea to that charge, I believe, by no contest. Let me look at my notes.
It was, Your Honor.
And I used the police report in the affidavit. So I thought she was under community corrections supervision, and that's on me. On January 2nd, when I first saw her, I thought she was on it. And then I asked her and she said she was on it. And I never confirmed with community corrections that she was. So apparently she never was. So she took the plea. I'm trying to figure out what I'm dealing with here. Methamphetamine helps me understand the story. And I still don't know what I'm dealing with. The plea offer was made after Ms. Davis took office. So it's not one of these ones that she's bound by the previous administration. Attempted R&O, no additional jail was the plea offer. If I decline to follow that, the defendant would have a right to withdraw a plea. Mr. George, let's start with you and maybe you can give me some insight here.
Thank you, Your Honor. Well, I know we're off to a bit of a bumpy start this morning, but I think, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Gabriel, but in conversations with the prosecutor's office, they had been in contact with my client's grandmother, who is the complaining witness as it relates to count one, the domestic violence. And I think that her position was that she needs to be on some type of treatment, on some type of supervision to try to get this issue under control. This has been, from their perspective, an ongoing situation where, they indicate that Amber has been dealing with some substance abuse issues, comes to the house, and then, as the court said, they're not generally, knockdown, drag out fights, but enough to cause them alarm and want her out of the house. So I think that a term of probation would allow the court to get a better handle on what she's doing, what she needs to do, get the substance abuse or the substance abuse treatment in place. I think that an assessment would be appropriate to get an idea of what's going on. I know there's some methamphetamine in the past, but my understanding, kind of coming into at least 30 minutes ago, was it was mostly alcohol, but obviously there's other things that she's dealing with, and I think that she needs to get some treatment to help to alleviate those issues so we're not continuing on with this cycle. I'm not aware of any type of additional police contact or any issues with my client and her grandmother or anybody else in the home since she's been allowed to be back with her via the no contact being lifted. So, I believe that the probation would be the best way to try to adequately address the circumstances that brought her in front of the court. I understand that whenever there's a positive methamphetamine test, that's always very concerning. I would ask the court to consider deferring jail time over her head for her participation in those services. I think they're desperately needed. And I think that my client would like the person that she is when she's sober and being able to access those resources. Thank you.
Mr. Gabriel, what's your thought here?
Well, Your Honor, I wouldn't argue with what Mr. George has indicated about the facts that gave rise to this. I did have an opportunity to view the video myself. I saw that the grandmother was somewhat ambivalent about whether she wanted to push the case and have her granddaughter arrested. She ultimately decided to do that. That decision appeared to be somewhat of a surprise to Ms. Stevens when she was advised she was going into custody and there was a tussle. It wasn't anything of any degree of violence. It was more probably what I would say being uncooperative. And it required them to use more physical force than I'm sure the officers wanted to. As I look at her history, just from the complaint that we filed, I mean, we have a 10-year
15 year.
15.
First one's 2010.
Okay, I see one in 2014. So obviously you're even looking further back than I have in front of me. And so there's a long history, and we all know how difficult it is to put that behind. I'm disappointed, and I don't think the courts, should feel any responsibility in not checking up when the individual is given a bond and told that they're to report to community corrections. They either ask, well, where's that? Or they go do it. And I think the fact that Ms. Stevens didn't is an indication that, yeah, probation probably appropriate, but going to be somewhat problematic if she can't be honest with the probation officers. And I think we've already seen a little bit of that today when she indicated to the court she would come be clean when the test is done, and it hasn't happened. I'm not going to renege on what we indicated because I do think that having that up to a year in the county jail hanging over her head may very well be the additional inducement she needs to get serious about her problem. And based on what the grandmother has indicated to our office, that's what they'd like to see. I'm also, it's not my favorite kind of situation to involve the criminal justice system in, that families people can't find out. Clearly, she knows she's got a drug problem. Look how long it's been going on. She doesn't get help. It creates a problem in the family. Fortunately, not an overly violent one. But again, county's resources, law enforcement's pulled off to handle this kind of thing when there's more serious crime going on. And it's just a cycle that I don't know how we stop. Bottom line is, we stand by our recommendation.
All right, thank you. I've got several of these today involving young women where I really don't have a good answer. Ms. Stevens, what do you want to tell me?
I don't really so I think probation will probably has to help me. Don't really know what I should say, really.
Well, let me give you some information because I've known you for a long time. You weren't even 18 yet when we started. And right now, the last few times I've seen you, you've been so surly and withdrawn. I felt we were dealing with methamphetamine, and we are. 2010, you were charged with felonious assault on your grandmother. You pled to aggravated assault and you were placed on probation and you did complete the probation. 2011, you were charged with receiving concealing felony charge, which I think also involved your grandparents. That was dismissed. 2011, you had your first alcohol issue with a minor in possession. 2011, a little later in that year, you got arrested for operating with an unlawful blood alcohol when you were less than 21. So you pled to minor with a BAC. 2011, he pled to possession of cocaine, use of cocaine, and we don't see much of that anymore. You were placed on probation. The probation wasn't successful and you were revoked. 2013 is the first view of methamphetamine. You were charged with possession of methamphetamine and the matter was bound over to circuit court. 2020, you were charged with assaulting your grandmother on a domestic violence. It was reduced to disturbing the peace. Later in 2020, you were charged with domestic violence again on your grandmother and malicious destruction of property. You were put on a domestic violence probation and the probation was revoked. So you've done 2 probations with me, which were both revoked. 2023, you were charged with assaulting your grandmother again, domestic violence, 3rd offense, was dismissed. And there you have this incident. What precipitated this is you came home drunk, which presumes that you drove there drunk, which caused some sort of a disagreement between you and your grandmother, which was not terrible, but then they call the police and then it turns into something else. And I think Mr. Gabriel's right. You were surprised that you were going to go to jail and all of a sudden you didn't want to go to jail. And you did other things that you would always like not show up when you're supposed to. You didn't show up at 8:30, called at 1 o'clock and said, can I adjourn this? I have a job application. That happened a couple of times. And then we finally got the thing down. We ended up with a no contest plea because they wanted to just get rid of it. You were put on pretrial supervision, which you didn't comply with. I told you when I saw you, I was going to test you on the day of sentencing for methamphetamine, and you still test positive for methamphetamine. So that's the pink elephant in the room, that and this toxic relationship you have with your grandparents. So, and then there's a recommendation for no additional jail. I tend to agree with you. I don't think a probation is gonna do much, but
No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, word it like that. I do think that it will do a lot for me.
all right, well,
And I
you
hope
spoke
that-
like this. I could hardly hear what you had to say.
I'm
You
sorry.
come in, you put your hat over your head, you sit in the back corner. You're kind of that way again this morning.
Yeah. I apologize.
When did you last use methamphetamine?
I don't, I don't know. I hope that maybe. I don't-
Maybe, how about if I just order 365 days in jail and then you get a year to dry out? Or how about if you be straight up with me and tell me what's going on? When did you last use methamphetamine?
Must have been like a few days ago.
All right, why was that so hard? Now, are you working someplace?
I work for my grandparents. I help them at the house.
Which is, you're not a help to them, you're a burden to them. You need to get out and get your own place. It makes you be like you're 14 years old and it's limited your growth as an adult. And I don't know where you get enough money to buy methamphetamine. We had alcohol, we had cocaine, now we have methamphetamine for 10 years. And she said you were drunk that night. And the police are like, we don't want to keep dealing with this. And the prosecutor is sort of in the same boat. So whoever's providing you with the methamphetamine is certainly no friend. I think it's the flower field connection. And your life is just one unfun day after the next. You've burned all the dopamine out of your brain. You don't have any enjoyment. Life is just one sad day. You deserve better than that. There was an agreement for no additional jail. If I order a jail sentence, you would have the right to withdraw your plea, which I don't think the prosecutor wants to happen. And you've had 2 previous failed probations and you never signed up for pretrial services. If I put you on probation, you understand you're not gonna be able to use methamphetamine.
Yes, sir.
That's a blessing. Do you smoke marijuana?
No,
Well, it's legal, except for the bond conditions. So no contest plea. Probation department's not gonna be thrilled about this, but we'll try it. I'm gonna do a 12-month probation. I feel like I'm setting you up to fail, but there will be a significant jail consequence if the probation doesn't work. 91 days in jail, credit 1, leaving 90 days to serve. Of the 91 days, 90 are deferred. That complies with the prosecutor's plea agreement for no additional jail time. The fine is 0. You need a real job. You do have a driver's license, what you told me when I saw you last time.
yeah,
Attorney fee is $150. The probation oversight fee is $480. Let's add that up. Somebody keeps posting your bond. Somebody put up a $10,000 cash or surety bond, which I suspect was your grandparents. So somebody paid $1,000 to a bonding company to get you out of jail, and that money's just gone. But they should have done let you sit for a little bit till we sorted this out. $755. You're on probation. I'm not going to do anger management. We've tried that. Drug and alcohol testing, substance abuse counseling and treatment as directed. Alcohol testing twice a week. Abstain from alcohol, prohibited controlled substances, including marijuana. Submit to test as directed by a probation department. No assaultive behavior. And get a job. You're stuck in Groundhog Day. You're doing the same thing all day, every day, and till your grandparents pass, and then you got to figure out what you're going to do with the rest of your life. Let's see if we can figure it out now. "90 days is held over your head. The offense is actual punishable by up to a year. So theoretically, there's 365 days of jail hanging over your head. It isn't that you need punishment necessarily. You need treatment. Are you amenable to doing an inpatient program if they can find one?
if that's what, I mean, if that's what has to be done.
Well, I don't know that it does, but telling you to, hey, stop using methamphetamine is like telling you to, hey, stop breathing. Don't breathe again until I see you in 2 weeks. And I told you I was going to give you a test, but you weren't able to stop using it because it's highly addictive and it's unrealistic for old white guys like me to tell some young girl, hey, stop using until I told you, without providing any treatment. But you are in a dark place, and I'd like to turn on the light. So that may be what's needed. You also need to stay away from the people that are providing the methamphetamine. And that's easier to say than to do. I think they know this is coming. You need to just let go. Like, you can't even tell me anything. You need to open up. And they're gonna try not to put you in jail for 91 days. They're gonna try to go in the other direction. I want you to take this form downstairs to the probation department. We'll get started with a 12-month probation. See if we can find some treatment and find a perhaps inpatient program for you to start with. Right now, you're not working. And we'll see if we can find something. That problem is the treatment isn't very effective. In truth, there's no chemical equivalent of some of the opioid drug treatments we have for methamphetamine. And it's so powerfully addictive that it just eats you up. You must have been clean during periods of time between 2013 and now. Were there times over the years where you didn't use meth?
Mhm. Yeah, yes.
All right, we need to get back to that place. All right, you go downstairs to probation. We'll see how we do here.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.